Which year was Yahusha's crucifixion? We've heard this question many, many times, and now we have the answers. Part 2 is coming up, but this PowerPoint here is going to be a keyhole peek into the important points, just a few of them. And the question is, will Common Era 30 furnish the foundation for the Gospel's crucifixion uniqueness? Can Common Era 30 amalgamate these points for full scriptural linear alignment? They must all find a linear alignment. A midst of the week, Abib 14 crucifixion, that is Daniel's prophecy, and it must be combined with the rest of these points. A big one, a huge one, is Matthew and John's written 12-hour festal offset. If you do not understand about the 12-hour offset of the two calendars, once you view part 2, I do hope that you will be understanding it because it is written in the scriptures. The lunar calendar of the unbelieving Jews. Yes, when you see that unbelieving underlined, that tells us very clearly that there was also believing Jews at the same time of the crucifixion. The numbers are very few, but they are there, and that is written in the scriptures also. How about when the Jews, the scribes and the Pharisees, said there was going to be no crucifixion at the feast? When they wanted to capture Yahusha, they knew there was going to be problems, and they said, not at the feast. Were they true to their words, or did they alter it? How about the 3 days and 3 nights sign fulfillment? That's Jonah's sign. It doesn't say 2 days and a half night or 3 nights or 1 night. It says 3 days and 3 nights. That must be accrued properly. A preparation day purchase and mixing of spices. When was that second batch of spices purchased and mixed? You're going to see in the part 2 of this crucifixion that it is near impossible. Well, I will say it is impossible to purchase and prepare spices without breaking the Sabbath day on the lunar calendar. Number 7, first cycle at twilight. Yahusha's words on the first day of the week, as it began to dawn, he said, I am ascending to my Father. Why was he ascending? What was he doing? What fulfillment was he taken on himself? He is the etzem. That word etzem is the bone structure of your salvation. That is how it is described for the first fruit fulfillment. How many times, how long is it that we have forgotten to observe wave sheaf and the first fruits? It is the bone structure of our salvation. Based on Torah's blood-ratified covenant calendar, there has been a complete absence of a scriptural fourth cycle on Abib 14 in the years Common Era 26 to 29 and 31 to 34. That's what we have examined so far. The lunar faux pas, Abib 14, on the fourth cycles we have seen, have zero capability of aligning with the 12-hour calendar offset as written in the scriptures. So what is Common Era 30 going to deliver? Will there be a true fourth cycle Abib 14? And will it provide for a lunar 12-hour offset connection with covenant calendar? Will we find that? We haven't found it in the years prior. What will Common Era 30 show us? We're going to look at some universal time information, and we're going to be going with the accuracy. The problem is it's recorded in Roman reckoning. We're going to look at that too. The time of the Tekufa was at UT 22 hours and 37 minutes on March 22 in Common Era 30. What time was this in Jerusalem? The hour was 22 hours and 37 minutes, and we add 2 hours to that for the Tekufa. What happens then? It goes to 37 minutes after midnight. what happens after midnight according to man? Man's date now becomes March 22. Please compare these two dates. One is the 22nd, one is the 23rd. What does that do to the Tekufa? What does that do to Abib 14? What does that do to the cycle of the week upon which the crucifixion would be? Again, what cycle of the week was it now? Roman reckoning friction with Yahuwah's Tekufa, or the equinox. What is Roman reckoning? We need to look at this. Common Era 30 Tekufa, UT 22 hours and 37 minutes. You'll see with this brown marker here, this is the time of the Tekufa. Here, this red line is the midnight point of Roman reckoning date exchange. This is at midnight. This is where man has declared that the day is exchanged into the next day. One day ends over here, the next day ends over here, according to man. Yes, we do see this written in the scripture also. So one day would be March 22 over here, and after adding 2 hours for Jerusalem time for the Tekufa, it would be March 23 over here. That's because it's very close to this midnight marker, which man has declared his. Does Yahuwah accept man's Roman reckoning? We're going to be looking at the lunar calendar for Common Era 30. Here we see the Tekufa on the 22nd, and we are informed that the conjunction is on the 22nd also. You will see that here in the fuchsia box. That's where our information comes from. So there is the conjunction. Here comes the sliver moon. As per the naval chart, it's recorded to be on the 24th right here. And then comes new moonth day. From new moonth day, on the 25th, we count 14 cycles to the lunar Abib 14 in the brown box right here, 14 cycles. It is found on the 6th cycle, that is a Friday in common terms, and it would start after sunset on the evening before, according to the Talmud, and that would make it on a 5th cycle. So the Abib 14 would start on a 5th cycle in Common Era 30, according to the lunar calendar. There's a big problem with this. You cannot achieve a 12-hour offset in Common Era 30 with this lunar calendar. There is no scriptural fulfillment. But what do we have? What is shown here? If Abib 14 in Common Era 30 lands on a 6th cycle or a Friday, was it actually a Christian Friday crucifixion? So who's correct? The Torah and Daniel's prophecy of a 4th cycle crucifixion, or over here, was it actually a Christian Friday crucifixion? Have we been given some convoluted information to purposely form the Christian Friday crucifixion? Is there an agenda to lead us astray? So let's look at Yah's Genesis light season covenant. Remember, there's a light season covenant and a night season covenant. We read about those in Jeremiah. And it is the dawn to dawn light season, as written in Genesis 1 and throughout the scriptures, that declares the 4th cycle Tekufa. So let's have a look. Here we see the Tekufa is on a 4th cycle. That's good. Remember, New Year's Day comes after the Tekufa. Count the numbers above these green lines. This is your Abib 1 to Abib 14 count. Where does it land us? This is a Wednesday in common terms. This is a 4th cycle of the week. This is where prophecy says that the crucifixion is supposed to happen, a 4th cycle of the week. This is the only year from Common Era 26 to 34 that establishes a Tekufa-based Abib 14 for a 4th cycle crucifixion as per scripture. Please read this again. This is the only year that provides this. There is no other year from 26 to 34 that accomplishes a fourth cycle crucifixion according to the scriptures. What does Luke have to say? Woe to you, learned in the Torah, because you took away the key to knowledge. Please note, this arrow comes down from the Tekufa. You took away the key to knowledge. Could this Tekufa be the key? What if this Tekufa was removed around 700 BC and the lunar system was incorporated into their worship system? What would that lunar system do? Is there another calendar? Is there two calendars? Is one ruled by the Tekufa? Is one ruled by the moon? Let's have a look. That will come out in part 2. Here's another detour. What if the Tekufa is the first cycle of the year, like many want to insist? Have you heard that? Where people say, oh, the Tekufa is the first cycle, and the next day after is the second day of the year. Is that what we see in Scripture? We have not seen it yet in part 1, because it cannot be so far. What are we going to see in Common Era 30? Will Scripture agree, or will it annihilate this notion? Now, this slide, I want you to think very, very carefully. Consider the spiritual assassination. I'm not thinking about the physical crucifixion at the moment. I want you to consider the spiritual assassination impact of crucifying Yahusha prior to the deceived believers' lunar Passover festival. At this point here, it is the Lunar Abib 13 light season. It is prior to their festival. See, here is the sunset. It is the light season of their Abib 13. Yahusha was crucified in the light season prior to sunset and on prior to their Jewish feast of Passover. Could this event have falsely confirmed in the people's deluded minds that Yahusha was just a useless criminal? If you did not study the Torah or the scriptures, is that what you would believe? It's just another person that had to die? The sunset occurs right here. This is the sunset. With that, on comes the night season. Remember, the Talmud says that the sunset changes the day. This is what we have heard, so prevalent. If the date changed, it would have been the Lunar Abib 14 after the sunset. What happened after the sunset? And how effective was this moral character assassination? But I ask a little bit deeper, how effective was this spiritual character assassination? What would this death before the lunar Passover, what effect would it have on the people's belief system about Yahusha? What would it do to their spiritual belief structure? Would the average temple believer have entertained that Yahusha was and is the Mashiach, even for a fleeting second? Or would they automatically think, well, he was crucified before Passover, so he's useless? Is that the delusion that the adversary was wanting the people to believe? How easy was it for them to overlook the spiritual purpose of our Mashiach? Here is a look at the lunar sunset's 12-hour offset. It is the covenant calendar Pesach, midst of the week, dawn to dawn, according to Daniel 9:27. Please note this square box. This is dawn to dawn right here. What did the scribes and the Pharisees say about capturing Yahusha? Matthew 26:5. Not at the festival. This is what they declared. Were they true to their words, or did they mess up? Yahusha volunteered his capture in Gethsemane on Abib 13, both covenant calendar and the lunar calendar. Please look at this gray triangle right here. This gray triangle represents after the sunset right here. This represents the night season of sunset to sunset. At this point, it is Abib 13 on both the lunar calendar and the covenant calendar. Here is the dawn. This blue marker brings in dawn. At dawn, John's first preparation announcement. Why is the first emphasized? Because if there's a first, that indicates quite squarely that there will be a second. Was there two preparations? Let's look at it. John 19:14. And it was the preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour. And he said to the Jews, see your sovereign? That 6th hour is Roman reckoning. You'll see an example of that written in Matthew 27, verse 19. The 6th hour comes 6 hours after midnight. So if you count from midnight, 6 hours, at what point are you? It is at dawn. At dawn, John announced, as the preparation of Yahuwah began, he announced it is the preparation of the Passover, dawn to dawn. You just saw this blue outline triangle come in. This is representation of the light season of Abib 13. This is when Yahusha was on the tree, but it is Abib 13 on the lunar calendar of the Jews. Here is the sunset with this bar here. This is at the sunset. It is at this sunset that John announced a second preparation belonging to what? Belonging to the lunar calendar, which started at sunset that same light season. There is your second preparation. Again, sunset's 12-hour offset. Covenant calendar Pesach, midst of the week, right here. This is, again, Abib 14. Here is the night season, again, of Abib 13. This is your sunset to sunset system. The blue outlined triangle was still Abib 13 on the Jewish calendar, the lunar-based calendar. It was still Abib 13 here. But what day was it up here? What cycle of the week? It was the midst of the week, Abib 14 on covenant calendar. This is the day that Yahusha was being crucified. He was hanging on the tree at this time, but it was still the lunar morning of Abib 13. Matthew 26:5. It was not at their festival. Yes, Yahusha was being crucified, but not on their festival, the lunar-based festival of the Jews. Were they true to their word? Yes, absolutely. Give credit where it is due. They held solid to their words. They declared that they would not crucify Yahusha on their festival, and that's exactly what they did. Problem is, their calendar, their lunar-based calendar, is different than covenant calendar. It was Pesach here when they crucified Yahusha. What specific humanly professed catalyst from the Talmud now accomplishes full scripture alignment throughout the Gospels? What happens here at the end of the light season that is recorded in the scriptures? The sunset event occurs. The lunar calendar, Abib 14, began at sunset right here. Abib 14, covenant calendar, midst of the week. Here is your sunset. This brown bar is the sunset. You saw the dark triangle come in here. This is the night season after this sunset. The night season after the sunset. What happened here? Remember, Yahusha was hanging on the tree right here. He was being crucified and he died at the third hour in the light season of Abib 14. What happened after the sunset? After the sun had set, Matthew 26, 57 to 61, and Mark 1:32, and chapters 15, 42 to 47 in the verses. Why is this verse emphasized? Mark 1:32. Why is this emphasized? The reason is because Mark tells us very clearly when the even is. If you have any doubt whatsoever in your mind about when the even is during the crucifixion, Mark will tell you very clearly it is after the sunset. And that aligns perfectly with the rest of Scripture, especially in the Torah, where it outlines it clearly. What happened after this sunset? Joseph requested the body of Yahusha when? After the sun had set. What does that do to having Yahusha in the tomb before sunset? It eliminates it totally. And there is numerous witnesses against that. So this sunset is absolutely phenomenally important. What date was it in this night season? According to covenant calendar. According to covenant calendar, the sunset does nothing in terms of changing the date. But in terms of the lunar calendar of the Jews, it now was Abib 14 on the lunar calendar. Did they crucify Yahusha? According to their lunar calendar, did they crucify him at the feast? No, they held true to their words, but it was still Abib 14 on the covenant calendar. After the sun had set, in the night season, John announced the lunar calendar preparation day was then functioning. There was 2 Passovers and 2 calendars in 1 light season, 1 crucifixion, 1 Mashiach. What calendar was our Mashiach on? Was he not on the covenant calendar, Pesach, as according to the statutes? What about the lunar calendar? What schedule is it on? According to the moon? And who is being worshipped when you're not on Yahusha's calendar, the covenant calendar? Yes, there were 2 Passovers, 2 calendars, and 1 light season. This second calendar is exactly what Yahusha exposed when he was 12 years old in the tabernacle, 3 days after the Jewish feast. What was he doing? What feast, what important feast was Yahusha observing after the lunar calendar? 2 preparations. When were they? John 19:14. Therefore, since it was the preparation, remember, this is at dawn, the 6th hour from midnight. There is your covenant calendar preparation. This is the first one. Yahusha was then crucified, and 12 hours after dawn, that brings us to sunset on the lunar calendar. Let's read it. John 19:42. Therefore, then, because of the preparation of who? Of the Yahudim. This is a different calendar. This is the lunar calendar. This is Abib 14 on the lunar calendar. This is another preparation. It is the second preparation of the crucifixion. John and Matthew have written in the scriptures that there were exactly 2 different preparation cycles, each from a different calendar, individually and simultaneously functioning during the night season of burial preparations of Yahusha's body. 2 calendars, 12 hours offset. In part 2, this 12-hour offset is going to be exposed day by day, detail by detail, event by event, very, very clearly, step by step throughout part 2. Please do not miss it if you want to understand this 12-hour offset. Actually, there could have been 3 preparations. Were they not preparing Yahusha's body for burial? A different type of preparation, but what better day was there to prepare the body than on a preparation? Just another thought. Deuteronomy 31:20. What did Yahuwah say? And I shall bring them into the land flowing with milk and honey, of which I swore to their fathers, and they shall eat and be satisfied and be fat. Then they shall turn to other mighty ones and do what? And they shall serve them. How do they serve them? By following the doctrine of other mighty ones over and above that of what Yahuwah has written in the scriptures. They are serving them, and they will scorn me. And what does Yahusha say about this? And they will break my covenant. Does it get any more serious than that? They'll break my covenant. We remember what Moshe did at the golden calf. He broke the tablets. 2 calendars, one of the abominable lunar type, and we see that written clearly in Isaiah 1 verse 13. It is declared abominable right there. There is no stronger word written in the scripture that pertains to this lunar calendar. Here are some appropriate words spoken by our Creator. I have been told many times that Yahusha observed the feast of the Jews. Many people declare that solidly, that Yahusha observed the feast of the Jews. Did he? What is his words? Did not Moshe give you the Torah? Yet not one of you does the Torah. Why do you seek to kill me? If Yahusha observed the feast of the Jews, right here with those words, he would incriminate himself as a sinner. For if he kept the feasts of the Jews and they did not observe the Torah, would he also not be a sinner also? If you do not keep the Torah, the statutes, the feasts of Yahuwah, that is a sin. That is a separation from Yahuwah. And yet Yahusha says, not one of you does the Torah. What calendar were the Jews observing? Was it governed by the moon? What calendar was Yahusha on? Matthew 5:20. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall by no means enter into the reign of the heavens. Exceeds. That is not the same as. It is not equal to. It is over and above anything that the scribes and Pharisees did and taught. We must, our doctrines, our faith structure must exceed and do better than what they were doing at that time. Where do you get your calendar today? Here's some verses down here. You can study this out further for yourself. I hope you do that before you see part 2. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant, which I commanded him in Horeb. For who? For all Yisrael, laws and right rulings. All Yisrael. Was Yahusha part of Yisrael? Did he have to obey the Torah statutes? When was Yahusha's crucifixion? Was it Common Era 30? Did Yahusha remember the Torah even throughout his crucifixion with the Passion Week? Yahusha had entered his 31st year when he died. He fulfilled the lamb of the first year, and that statute is found in Exodus 12:5. Be certain to set aside time for a thorough examination in part 2 to internalize every detail at your own pace. Why do I say at your own pace? Because every detail in there is very, very strong, and there is many of them. But you can go through this number 2 PowerPoint coming up at your own pace. It will be recorded. It will be on our website. That's all for now, but I have a special invitation for you. I should say, Charlene and I have a special invitation for you, and we ask you to please join us live next week. Join us for this part 2 presentation. We will be rebuilding the calendar wall. restoring the old places, the paths to dwell in, as per Yahuwah's stipulations in the Torah. And we can sign up with Covenant Calendar Club on the Friday and Sabbath Zoom meetings, and including the live discussion. You do not want to miss the live discussions. That is where some of the most important questions and answers come out. So here it is, your website down here. Here's where you can sign up, and we invite you to do this, please. Don't let tradition box you in. May Yahusha bless you greatly with wisdom, peace, and courage. Shalom